Hey guys, it's been a little while since I've made a video, and I haven't really done any big stuff that some of my previous videos have been, like big launches. So I figured I'd just do a quick update on some of the stuff I've been working on, which is laid out on the ground here. The first thing I worked on right after the last video was this little guy I call Pigeon. It's a rubber band catapult launched little test thing. My idea with it was that it would be easier to set up than a full rocket for tests of parachutes or flight computers or deployment mechanisms. So it's just got some fins at the bottom, a PVC pipe in the middle, and then a little recovery module at the top. It's got a receiver, battery, servo, and then a little shelf for the parachute to go on here. It didn't work very well. The rubber band was not really strong enough to get it as high as I wanted. I've kind of shelved it in favor of other projects for the moment. It might get its own video later on, but probably not. One of the big things I've been working on is a new release head for the rocket. My old one here has this one lever, so you can see this moves out. I have a video on this, but it has one grip point in the side to grab onto the nozzle, which means that the nozzle is only held on one side and can kind of pop free, which was a problem when I was pressurizing to like 300 psi. The nozzle would pop out of here and, release early. This new design has two levers. So you can see they open up like that, like scissors, and release the nozzle. The nozzle design is identical. I'm really proud of how I've held these levers at the bottom. So they both are on opposite sides of the pipe and go opposite ways. And then they have this ring that locks them in place. And then this ring is prevented from spinning by a servo, which the servo horn goes into this little slot right here. So that's a design I'm really happy with. This has worked pretty well overall. An interesting part about this is that it still uses these push to connect fittings. I really like these. They're really easy to use and cheap and versatile. They're only rated to like 100 psi, and this is intended for use at like 300 psi, which seems like a bad idea, and it probably is. But they only operate at the Launchpad end, so they're well away from any people. And I did pressure test them up to like 300 or 400 psi to make sure they would hold it. At least, hopefully would hold at that pressure. This is a tower launcher, and it's another one of the things I've been working on. This is a lot easier to set up and transport and just generally use than my giant rail launcher. And another nice thing is it doesn't need rail buttons. So you take a rocket like this little one here, doesn't have any rail buttons, it just slides in the top, and the three rails, the three rods, keep it nicely aligned and make sure it goes up straight. This is all built off of hardware from Sascha. The top ring is pulled straight off that rocket. I just designed some extra little brackets here, and then the base here is just the Sascha launcher, which will also be used on Javelin, which is my big cluster rocket. So after I developed both this tower launcher and the new release head, I flew some small rockets like this quite a bit, which was a lot of fun. I haven't really done anything super exciting with them, but I've got some video that I'll show you here. As well as developing the bottom end of rockets with my new pads and release heads, I've developed the top a bit with this nice vacuum formed nose cone. To make these, I just 3D print a mold, and then you heat up some plastic in an oven and then put it on a little table connected to a vacuum cleaner, and it sucks the plastic down over it. So far I haven't had great results with this. I need to buy some thicker plastic. You can see it has these weird fins at the bottom, and it's hard to see a bit, but it's really thin at the top here, towards the top, and so it's not really suitable for nose cones. so far. I need to do a little more work on that. The final thing I've been working on is continuing work on my swordfish rocket here. This is kind of my workhorse rocket. And I flew it off of the new release head and the new tower to kind of do a little testing on that, and that worked really well. I also flew it with a revised version of the flight computer software, which seems to have fixed all the bugs we were having. The last flight of this rocket, the parachute was deployed really early, and I think that was just because it was in ground test mode accidentally. And so I made it really obvious if it's in ground test mode so that I can make sure that doesn't happen again. It worked really well overall though, and so here's some of that footage. So that's a little bit of what I've been working on. I've also been working on some parachute systems, which will get their own video. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a pretty interesting video, I think. And so I mentioned that my next rocket, or my big project I'm working on, is a cluster rocket. Here's a diagram of that from the top so you can get some ideas of it. Because that's a cluster and also operates at 300 psi, when I was designing this release head, I was like, well, I should calculate how much force that is. Well, I ran the math, and it needs to hold down 1,000 pounds of force. So these flimsy little plastic 3D printed parts are not going to be up to the task. So that'll be an interesting video at some point, making a version of this out of probably steel and aluminum. Excitingly, to help with that, we got a lathe, from our cousins, which I'm pretty excited about. I'll have to do some learning on how to use this, but that'll be pretty cool. Anyway, that's a bit of what I've been up to. Hope you enjoyed a bit different style of video here, and I'll see you next time.